The rain drummed softly on the roof of Edward Grayson's old cottage, a soothing rhythm that matched the slow beat of his heart. At 92, he had seen many such rainy afternoons, but this one carried a hint of tension he couldn't quite place. As he tended to the wild rose bushes that crept along the edges of his porch, he noticed a sleek black car pull up in front of his home. From the driver's seat emerged a young woman in a crisp blazer, her heels clicking against the cobblestones. Amy looked up at the aging house, barely hiding her disdain. To her, it was just another rundown property, one she could flip for a quick profit if she played her cards right. Edward glanced up, meeting her gaze with a warm but guarded smile. "Afternoon, miss. Something I can help you with?" His voice carried the steady calm of a man who had faced far greater storms than the one falling around them. Amy put on her best sales pitch smile, pulling out a glossy brochure. "Mr. Grayson, I'm with Horizon Development, and I think you'll be very interested in what we can offer you for this property." She glanced around the unkempt yard, imagining the luxury condos she could sell once the old man moved out. Edward took the brochure but didn't bother to open it. He studied Amy with a sharpness that caught her off guard, and she shifted uneasily under his steady gaze. "I've lived here nearly 70 years. I know every brick, every root. Why would I give it up now?" Amy's smile faltered, replaced by a flash of impatience. "Well, times change, Mr. Grayson. Wouldn't you rather spend your golden years somewhere comfortable instead of this?" She gestured at the house as if it were an eyesore. Edward's lips twitched with a hint of amusement. "Comfortable a state of mind, miss, and I'm quite comfortable right where I am." The rain began to fall harder, but neither of them moved. Amy, used to pushing through deals with sheer persistence, wasn't ready to give up yet. She gave him a smile she hoped would appear confident. "I'll be back with a better offer. You'll see, Mr. Grayson. Everyone has a price." Edward watched her retreat, his smile fading into a thoughtful frown. "Maybe so, miss, but some of us learned long ago that not everything's for sale." As Amy drove away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had underestimated the old man on the porch, and Edward, watching the rain wash over his garden, knew that a new kind of battle was brewing, one he hadn't faced in years, but one he was ready for. Certainly. Here's the continuation of the story, picking up from where we left off, building on the dynamic between Amy and Edward as their conflict deepens. The next morning, Amy sat in her car outside Edward's property, staring at her notes and taking a deep breath. Her boss had made it clear that landing this deal was crucial, but she knew Edward wouldn't be easily swayed. She stepped out into the cool morning air, rehearsing her lines one last time. Edward was already on his porch, a steaming cup of tea in hand. He seemed to be expecting her, the same calm smile on his face as she approached. "Back so soon, miss? Didn't think my little place was that interesting." Amy forced a smile, trying to keep her frustration hidden. "I've been thinking about our last conversation, Mr. Grayson, and I wanted to make you a more generous offer. We're prepared to double the price. Think about it. A comfortable retirement, maybe a new home somewhere warmer." Edward took a long sip of his tea, considering her words. Then he set his cup down and leaned forward slightly. "Amy, was it? Let me tell you something about this place. My wife and I built this house together, one brick at a time. We planted every tree you see here, watched them grow over the years. This land isn't just a property, it's our story." Amy swallowed, her prepared line slipping away. She hadn't expected this. She thought he'd be like every other elderly homeowner she'd dealt with, too weary to fight. She tried a different angle. "I understand that, Mr. Grayson, but sometimes letting go is the best way to honor those memories. You could live comfortably in a place where you don't have to worry about maintenance." Edward's eyes twinkled with a hint of mischief. "Maintenance isn't a worry, miss. It's a pleasure. And as for letting go, I learned a long time ago that you don't just give up on things you care about because someone offers you money. You fight for them." He stood up slowly, his back straightening despite the years that weighed on him. "Now, if you don't mind, I have some gardening to do. You're welcome to stay and chat, but I doubt you'll like my terms." Amy watched him disappear into the garden, her frustration growing. She glanced down at her notes, realizing they were useless against someone like Edward. "He's tougher than he looks," she muttered, heading back to her car. "But everyone has a weak spot. I just have to find his." Back at her office, Amy's boss, Mr. Carter, was less than pleased with her lack of progress. He leaned across his desk, his sharp features hardening. "You said this would be easy, Amy. We need that land for the development. It's the linchpin for the whole project." Amy swallowed, keeping her composure. "He's different, Mr. Carter, but I'll get through to him. I just need more time." Carter narrowed his eyes. "Time isn't something we have. If you don't close this deal, there's no promotion, no bonus. In fact, there might not be a job left for you at all. Do you understand?" Amy nodded, but as she walked out of the office, her mind was racing. She knew she needed a new approach. Edward's stubbornness wasn't just about the money. There was something deeper at play, something he wasn't telling her. If she could figure it out, maybe she could turn things in her favor. She spent the next few days digging through town records, visiting the library, and speaking to longtime residents. It was during one of these visits that she stumbled upon an old newspaper clipping. It showed a young Edward and his wife, Emily, standing proudly in front of a newly planted tree in their front yard. The headline read, "Local Couple Leads Effort to Preserve Historic District." Amy's fingers traced the edge of the photograph. "He's not just an old man holding on to his home. He's fighting for what they built together." A pang of guilt tugged at her, but she pushed it aside. She had a job to do, and if understanding Edward's motivations could help her succeed, she wouldn't hesitate. The next time Amy visited Edward, she brought a more refined pitch, offering him a chance to stay in a high-end retirement community nearby. "You'll still be close to town, but you won't have to worry about keeping up with the house or the yard. You could have a new start, surrounded by people your age." Edward listened patiently, but his expression remained unchanged. He shook his head slowly. "You don't get it, do you, Amy? This place, this community, it's not just where I live. It's who I am, and I'm not the only one who feels that way." Before she could respond, Edward gestured towards the street where several neighbors had gathered listening. "You see, miss, you think you're offering me a way out, but you're just trying to take away what little we have left, and we're not going anywhere." Amy's gaze shifted from Edward to the faces of the elderly residents watching them. She could see a quiet determination in their eyes, a unity she hadn't anticipated. But she forced a smile, hiding her unease. "We'll see, Mr. Grayson. We'll see." As she drove away, Edward's words lingered in her mind. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for his community. And suddenly, her task seemed far more complicated than she had imagined. 2 days later, Amy found herself standing outside Edward's front gate again, but this time, her demeanor was different. She knocked on the door, and when Edward opened it, he found her holding the old newspaper clipping. "You and your wife, Emily. You fought to protect this neighborhood years ago, didn't you?" Amy asked, her voice softer than before. Edward's eyes narrowed as he took the clipping from her hands. "What's your game, miss?" "No game," she replied. "I found out what my company's really planning. If you sell, they'll evict the rest of the residents using a legal loophole. I think we might be able to help each other." Edward studied her for a moment, seeing a flicker of sincerity in her eyes. He wasn't sure if he could trust her yet, but something told him that she might be telling the truth. He nodded, slowly, gesturing for her to come inside. "All right, Amy, let's hear what you have in mind." Inside the warmth of Edward's home, surrounded by pictures of his past, Amy laid out the information she had uncovered about her company's intentions. She showed him documents that revealed their plans to demolish the entire block and replace it with luxury condos. Edward absorbed the details, his jaw tightening as he read. I knew they were up to something, but this is worse than I thought. Amy shifted in her seat. I'm willing to work with you. We can expose what they're doing, but I need your help. I don't know how to fight them, but you've done this before. Edward looked at her, seeing a spark of determination he hadn't noticed before. He nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. All right, Amy. If we're going to do this, we do it my way. No shortcuts, no cutting corners. Agreed? Amy hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. As they began to form their plan, the rain continued to fall outside. But inside the old house, a new alliance was forged, one that would change both their lives forever. Absolutely. Let's continue the story. I'll build the next chapters to maintain the tension and deepen the plot as Edward and Amy prepare to confront the company's plans. In the days that followed, Amy spent her evenings at Edward's house, learning from him about the legal and bureaucratic maze they would need to navigate. Edward shared stories from his past, his wife Emily's tireless efforts to preserve the neighborhood, the time he'd spent advocating for their community in front of town councils, and the values that had driven him all those years. Amy listened intently, a sense of admiration growing within her. The man she had once dismissed as stubborn was more like a guardian, protecting a legacy she had failed to understand. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was doing something that truly mattered. Edward noticed the change in her, too. Where she had once been ambitious for the sake of a paycheck, she now seemed driven by a desire to make things right. As they planned their next move, Edward handed her an old, worn book containing notes and letters from community meetings years ago. Emily used to say that fighting for something isn't about winning every battle. It's about knowing which ones are worth losing, Edward said, a distant look in his eyes. Amy flipped through the pages, finding inspiration in Emily's words. She sounds like she was an incredible woman. She was, Edward replied, a soft smile touching his lips. And I see a little bit of her fire in you, Amy. The compliment caught Amy off guard, and she quickly turned back to the notes, trying to hide her blush. But the warmth in Edward's words stayed with her, fueling her determination to prove herself, not just to him, but to the woman she was becoming. Amy discovers a clause in the town's preservation laws that could prevent any demolition if they can prove the historic value of Edward's home and its surrounding properties. It's a long shot, but it's their best chance. As the deadline for the property sale approached, Edward and Amy put their plan into action. They filed an injunction to halt the development, citing the historical significance of the neighborhood. The move catches the attention of the local news, and soon, cameras show up outside Edward's house, capturing the story of the old man standing against a powerful corporation. The media buzz puts pressure on Horizon Development, and Mr. Carter is furious. He storms into Amy's office, demanding to know why she's siding with that old fool instead of closing the deal. Amy stands her ground, revealing the documents she uncovered and accusing Carter of trying to manipulate the town for profit. You think you're some kind of hero, Amy? Carter sneers. This town doesn't care about a few old houses. They care about jobs, about progress, and when you fail, don't expect a place back here. Amy feels a pang of fear at his words, but she holds her head high. We'll see about that, she replies, her voice steady. She walks out, knowing there's no turning back. Edward watches from the porch as the media coverage continues to grow. He knows that they've managed to buy themselves time, but he also understands that the company won't give up easily. We've got their attention, but now we need to give them something they can't ignore, he tells Amy. That night, a car speeds past Edward's house, throwing a brick through his window with a threatening note. Amy finds it the next morning and realizes that the stakes have become much higher and much more dangerous. The intimidation attempt only strengthens Edward and Amy's resolve. They gather signatures from neighbors and former students of Edward's who remember his contributions to the town. Together, they build a case to present at the upcoming town meeting, arguing that Horizon Development's plans would erase the town's history and hurt the people who built it. Amy's skills as a negotiator shine through as she prepares the presentation, but it's Edward's stories that capture the hearts of the town's residents. As he practices his speech, he shares anecdotes of the neighborhood's history, weaving in the voices of those who can't be there, like Emily. Meanwhile, Horizon Development ramps up its efforts, launching a smear campaign against Edward, portraying him as a stubborn old man standing in the way of progress. Carter arranges a counter-petition, offering incentives to those willing to support the development, and some of the town's younger residents begin to waver. Amy discovers that Carter has been bribing town officials to sway the vote in Horizon's favor. She manages to obtain a recording of a meeting where Carter openly discusses his plan to bypass the legal injunction, but she's not sure if the evidence will be enough. The town meeting arrives and the atmosphere is electric. Half the town seems to support the development, lured by promises of new jobs and modern amenities. The other half stands behind Edward, hoping to preserve the character of the place they've called home for generations. Amy presents their case first, showing the evidence they've gathered, the stories of the elderly residents who built the neighborhood, and the underhanded tactics used by Horizon Development. But when Carter takes the stage, he counters with a speech about progress, dismissing Edward and Amy's claims as outdated sentimentalism. Edward, standing before the crowd, takes a deep breath and speaks from the heart. He talks about his wife, about the memories woven into the bricks of their home, and about the importance of holding on to what truly matters. The room falls silent as he shares the story of the last tree he and Emily planted before she passed, a symbol of their love and commitment to the town. Finally, Amy plays the recording of Carter's bribes, revealing the true nature of the development plan. The crowd murmurs in shock, and Carter's smug expression falters. Just as the vote is about to be taken, a representative from Horizon's corporate office arrives, declaring that the company intends to withdraw its support from the project, claiming that Carter acted without their approval. The room erupts in chaos, but Edward and Amy see a glimmer of hope. With Horizon Development's withdrawal, the town council votes to uphold Edward's injunction, preserving the neighborhood. Carter is forced to resign in disgrace, and his name becomes a stain on the company's reputation. The media turns Edward into a local hero, celebrating his victory as a triumph of resilience and community spirit. But Edward, standing in his garden, knows that the true reward isn't in the accolades. It's in the knowledge that his home, and the memories it holds, are safe. Amy, free from her job at Horizon, finds a new path as an advocate for small-town preservation, using her newfound skills to help other communities facing similar battles. She thanks Edward for teaching her what really matters, and he smiles at the woman she's become, a far cry from the ambitious realtor who first tried to buy him out. On the day they plant a new tree in Edward's garden together, a symbol of growth and new beginnings, Amy finds a note hidden among Emily's old letters, one that reveals Emily's own struggle to hold on to the house during hard times, a reminder that they've come full circle. Edward and Amy stand together in the town square as the community comes together to celebrate their victory. Edward sees the faces of those who had been his students, his neighbors, and his friends, all of whom carry the legacy of the town's history. Amy speaks to the crowd, sharing how Edward's strength and the memory of Emily inspired her to fight for what's right. She encourages others to stand up for their own stories, knowing that the fight for one's home is never truly over. As the sun sets over the town, Edward feels a sense of peace he hasn't known in years. He turns to Amy, his voice soft but filled with pride. "Thank you, Amy, for seeing what others didn't." Amy smiles, her eyes misty. "Thank you, Edward, for proving me wrong." Edward chuckles, the sound carrying on the evening breeze. Together, they walk back to the house, leaving behind the echoes of a battle won not with weapons, but with words, memories, and the courage to stand firm. If you were inspired by Edward's story and believe in standing up for what's right, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more stories of courage, resilience, and unexpected heroes. Share this video with someone who could use a reminder that age is just a number when it comes to making a difference. And remember, sometimes the ones we underestimate have the power to change everything. See you in the next story.